Today, one of those important matches of Tata Steel happened as Magnus Carlsen played against Fabiano Caruana. Now, Fabiano is a very solid opponent who played Magnus in the World Chess Championship match back in 2018. Fabiano was able to tie the classical portion against Magnus and only lost the match due to the playoffs. So Fabiano is a really strong opponent, and therefore it was a really exciting match to follow. Now, before I show you the Magnus game, I'll be showing you another absolutely brilliant game that happened between Jordan van Foreest and Arjun Erigaisi. This game contained two brilliant sacrifices, and it was a really beautiful tactical game, so I really wanted to show it to you before we went to the Magnus game. We got timestamps over here so that you can, jump wherever you want. But guys, this was absolutely beautiful. So, the game started with c4, and if you guys don't know, Jordan van Foreest is a really strong grandmaster from Netherlands. Arjun Erigaisi is a 19-year-old chess prodigy from India, also very, very strong, obviously. We have here knight f6, knight c3, g6, and this transposed to a king's Indian. And now this is the main line of the king's Indian with knight f3. So there's all very standard stuff. Black goes e5 to try to break the center, h6 stopping bishop g5, and now white goes rook b1 to try to expand on the queen side. So e takes d4, knight takes, and rook e8. Now, guys, prior to this game, Jordan van Foreest was having a pretty bad tournament. He was having one of the last standings in the rankings. So this game was absolutely a game that Jordan really wanted to win to try to get back to the tournament, because guys, we are right now approaching, sort of the end of the tournament. Okay, we're like right in the middle, but we're approaching the final half of the tournament. So now is the moment where all players really want to start catching up if they want to get a good standing at the very end. So rook e8, and now f3 defending this pawn. This is a move that has to be played. And now c6. Black doesn't want white to ever go knight d5, and sometimes black can even prepare a d5 push, but maybe not yet, but at some point. Bishop f4 putting pressure on the pawn, and now knight h5 kicking away the bishop because black doesn't want the bishop to be there. Bishop belongs to e3, and now black went f5, which is a very typical pawn break in the king's Indian. It's very common for black to go f5. Now here, white did not care and went queen d2 because this pawn on e4 is defended by the knight. So there's no issues. This is also a very common idea, threatening the pawn on h6. Now, in this position, f4 was played, which is very normal, as Arjun is right now trying to block this bishop from being in this diagonal. This is not a pawn sacrifice, because if right now Jordan would capture, boom, we can see that this knight on d4 is hanging. So, bishop f2 has to be played, and now queen g5. In the king's Indian, you typically try to attack white's king. It typically becomes an opening where white is attacking on the queen side and black is attacking on the king side. Now, I typically prefer attacking on the king side, because at the end of the day, if you attack on the king side and you are able to achieve a good attack, you'll checkmate your opponent's king. But, yeah, the king's Indian is actually a really fun opening to play. So, rook f d1, Jordan wants to bring his rooks into the game. Knight d7, and now b4. Finally, the expansion is happening. Knight e5 does a really good square for the knight. And now, king h1, because sometimes there's threats of going knight takes f3. You can see that this queen is pinning the g2 pawn right now. So, Jordan wants to get the king out of the way. So, queen f6. Rook c1, choosing a better file for the rook, and now queen f7. Boom, the pawn on c4 is right now under pressure. Knight takes c4 could happen. So a4 and b6, Arjun is basically just trying to stop the expansion of white's queen side, and also, I mean, he needs to find a good spot for this bishop. So maybe he wants to go at some point something like bishop a6, but right now he can't do that because it would be b5. So queen a2 was played. White wants to go something like a5 and really start expanding here. Rook b8, getting the rook out of that file, and now a5, boom. Bishop d7, and developing the bishop, and a6, trying to really lock in all of black's pieces on the queen side. Rook e d8, knight c2, remaneuvering, and now this pawn on c4 is under a lot of pressure. So actually, the knight went back to d4, and now you cannot capture over here, because after captures, we can see that this pawn on c6 is going to be hanging. So the bishop has to go back to d7, And now rook d2 was played. Jordan decided to switch up the plans and start doubling up on the d file. King h7, rook d1. The rook is going back and forth. Guys, you may wonder what is really going on here, okay? But, I mean, both players are right now just trying to figure out what the plan is right now. So it may look a little bit strange, and maybe it is, but that is what's going on. This is actually pretty common in chess. You just kind of move around your pieces. So now Jordan switched up his plan. He went with the queen to d2 instead. Rook c8, bishop f1, and then bishop e8. And now knight c e2 is trying to remaneuver. He's threatening this pawn on f4. But now actually knight e2 was a mistake because black has this fantastic move right now, which is c5. Boom! What is the idea of c5? Well, the idea is that one, you're stopping white from ever expanding on the queen side. You cannot go b5 right now because then the knight is going to be hanging. And if you would capture now on c5, this would be a really, really, really bad position for white because after d takes, boom, you can see that now Arjun is going to be winning a piece as the knight is pinned. So queen is not fantastically placed on d2. So this actually would be a really good position. I mean, white would have to go something like knight b3, but this would definitely, I mean, this pawn would become very, very weak. And now black would be able to even expand on the king side. And all of a sudden, black is expanding on two sides of the board, which is just really good. So this would have been a great chance for Arjun, but instead he played this other move, queen f7. He went back with the queen, and now knight c3 was played. Yes, guys, right now this is very strange. Jordan is going back and forth, but he's kind of just asking Arjun what it is. What are you doing, Arjun? What is your plan? So queen e1, bishop f7, a little bit more remaneuvering. The pawn on c4 is kind of hanging, but b5 was played with the idea that now if captures this pawn on c6 is going to be hanging. So c5 was finally played here. It's a move that Arjun has to go for. And now everybody, knight c6. Jordan is sacrificing a pawn. So what is the idea? Well, the idea is that now if Arjun would capture on c6 and pawn takes and rook takes, then he would get this fantastic square on d5. And sometimes a pawn can be worth giving if you get some good squares in chess. And this is a great square for the knight, because if, for instance, the bishop would capture here, after something like e takes d5, the rook would be hanging, the rook would be attacked, and actually after something like queen e7, this a7 pawn could become very weak, and this a6 pawn could become fantastic for white. So these are some of the ideas. But after knight c6, actually Arjun just moved the rook. He just went rook d7. But now, actually, Jordan found a brilliant chess move that Arjun was probably not expecting. Now, guys, right now, I mean, if you have the engine on like a lower depth, like the engine will not like realize that it's such like a fantastic move, but the higher depth you put the engine, the more it realizes that it's a great move. Knight takes a7, everybody. Fantastic move, giving away the knight, literally sacrificing the knight for a pawn. But the idea is that after Arjun captures it back, he goes rook takes d6. This pawn is hanging, and these two pawns are two protected passers that are just going to be absolutely amazing. They're just going to push, and they're going to be absolutely amazing. But this is not everything, guys. After knight takes c4 and bishop takes c4, black is getting back a pawn, and bishop takes c4. Rook takes b6. You know, white really needs to get this pawn. It's a really, really, really important pawn to take. Black went knight f6, trying to regroup the pieces. And now e5 is a crucial move, threatening the knight, expanding. And the idea is that white wants to start pushing this pawn, but also this one. And sometimes it can be, there's a lot of different ideas. This pawn on c5 is also weak, and white's pieces are very, very active, and white actually has two pawns for the piece, so it's actually pretty okay. Knight d7, everybody, and now the only move that actually gives an advantage for white, because any other move would actually be really, really, really bad for white. It would give black a huge advantage. This is absolutely crazy. Once again, the engine doesn't like recognize how good it is until you put it in a much higher depth. Jordan and Foreest sacrificed a rook. Two brilliant moves pretty much in a row. And this is a brilliant move by Chess.com. Rook takes g6. Beautiful. An absolutely beautiful move. And now the idea is that if black goes king takes g6, if Arjun captures the rook, there's this move queen e4 check. Only move if you don't want to get checkmated, because all of this is going to become a checkmate. Queen f5, you can see this, bam, 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 checkmate. So the king cannot go up. King of 7 is the only move. And after Jordan takes the bishop and the king goes back to f8 and e6, White is just completely winning this game. This pawn is strong, the queen is strong, the knight is hanging, the knight is coming up. All of White's pieces are fantastic, and this is a completely won position. So this is absolutely amazing. So after rook takes g6, Arjun actually went knight takes e5, which is the boss move to capture the pawn in the center, threatening the rook. Now the rook went back to d6, but now this diagonal is open and the king is a lot weaker. So rook e8, queen d2, queen f7, bishop takes c5, and slowly but surely, White started getting a much better position, and the a7 pawn became really, really good. Queen d3, the king is exploited. Rook a6, trying to push the pawn at some point, and this is actually right now a completely winning position for White. It was very practically hard for Black to defend, and in this position, he's trying to get some sort of counterattack, but queen f1, idea being that if it takes, you're just going to be able to go king takes g2 and everything is fine. And now if White exchanges pieces, it's just going to be completely winning because the passers are just too strong. Queen f5 check, king went back, and after bishop d4, Arjun Erigaisi resigned. Jordan von Foreest won this game in a beautifully fantastic manner by going for those two brilliant sacrifices. They were absolutely beautiful, and yeah, I just thought that this was a game that I really wanted to show you before I went into the Magnus game, which I'm going to show you right now, everybody. We're going to see the Magnus game, but this was a win that really meant a lot for Jordan von Foreest because he's now not going to be, you know, at the very last of the rankings. This point means a lot as he can go up a few standings over there. So, we are now going to move on to the game that many of you are probably here to watch, which is the Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana game. Fabiano started with the move e4, and Magnus replied e5. And we saw a Ruy Lopez, everybody. We saw a Spanish opening, a6. This is all very, very, very common theory. Castles giving away this pawn on e4, but the idea is to go rook e1 and capture over here. So bishop e7, rook e1 defending the pawn, b5. Magnus expands on the queen side, which is a common idea here. Castles, a4. Fabiano tries to exchange and get a little bit of space himself as well. And a5, stopping Magnus from being able to push his a pawn and, you know, expand a lot over here. a5, bishop a6 can sometimes become a little bit annoying for White. So now d6, developing in c3. Typically here you want to go d4 and get a lot of center. So c3 is one of those common moves here. Rook b8, and now Fabiano went for h3. So h3, the idea is simply to stop Magnus from going bishop g4 and pinning the knight. It's not the most common move, but it's been played. h6, Magnus replied, going for the same idea of stopping Fabi from going bishop g5. And now d4. After takes and takes, there was a big exchange of pawns. And here, bishop d7 was played, simply developing the bishop. Fabi went bishop f4, developing, and now Magnus went knight e5, placing his knight right in the center. And, I mean, Fabi doesn't really want to exchange it because then he's going to be losing his bishop here, which is really good. So, in this position, Fabi went for the move knight a3, simply developing the knight, but also at some point maybe wanting to go knight c4, trying to exchange the knight, and maybe putting a little bit of pressure in the center. So, rook e8, bishop g3, bishop goes back. The idea is to go f4, bishop f8, and now boom, f4, threatening the knight. And now he's trying to regroup his pieces, trying to put his knight on c4, just trying to get his pieces to the best squares possible. So knight went back to c6, and Fabi went here for the move e5. Now e5 is a move that a lot of times you want to do because you want to expand, you want to get more center. But it can also become kind of risky because sometimes it can happen. What can happen is that your pawn on e5 can become very, very, very weak. So you have to always be really careful when you do these moves, right? But now, you know, the pawn is obviously completely defended with the pawn, with the bishop, with the rook. So there's a good moment to do it. So d takes, pawn takes, and now knight takes d4. Magnus captured on d4, and after it takes, he went for bishop c6. Now, bishop c6, you may be like, you know, why is chess.com saying that this is a brilliant move? Magnus is just simply getting his bishop out. He's putting it in a big diagonal. Why is it brilliant? Why? Well, the reason why this move is really good is because actually there's a lot of threats that come with this. We can see that right now, Fabi has several pieces that are kind of weak. This bishop is weak. It's only protected by this queen. This pawn is weak right now. And this pawn on g2 is weak. There's several characteristics. Typically, you don't want to have a piece defending several things at the same time. This queen is right now what we call a little bit overloaded, which means that the queen is both defending this and defending this pawn. So the queen has right now a little bit too many tasks, and actually this became a little bit crazy because Fabi in this position had to go something like either rook f1 or rook c1, but he did a blunder. Now, before I show you the blunder that he did, I'm just going to show you why he cannot capture this knight, because you may say, Anna, why is Magnus not caring about his knight? Well, the reason is because if Fabi would capture on f6, this would actually be a really bad move, because there would be rook takes e1, exchanging the rooks, and now there is this move, rook takes b3. So you see that the bishop is right now hanging, and in this position, if Magnus would capture with the bishop instead, there would anyways be rook takes b3, because after queen takes, boom, there's queen takes d4, and Fabi is losing this rook. So this would be really, really, really bad for Fabi. He does not want to enter that, so that's why he cannot capture on f6. So in this position, Fabiano blundered. He went bishop c2. Now, why is this a blunder, everybody? Well, you guys are going to see. Because Magnus shows why it is a blunder. And Magnus also shows why he's the world champion in chess. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic game that we can see here. So queen d5, the best move in the position. He's right now threatening checkmate on g2, so Fabi needs to defend it. But now the issue is that after rook at e2, we can see that the bishop can never retreat to f2, because boom, then the checkmate is going to happen. The rook's not going to be protecting on g2 anymore. So now Magnus Carlsen did another brilliant move. Once again, showing why he's so good, showing why he is Magnus Carlsen and why he's world champion. He went here, rook b4, and this is another brilliant move, because he's right now threatening this pawn on d4, and like I said, Fabi cannot go bishop f2 and defend the pawn. So now this pawn is actually completely lost. There's no way of defending it. You can do nothing to defend it. So Fabi went king h2, simply getting the king out of the way. And now rook takes d4. Fabi is a pawn down, and this is a terrible position for him because all of Magnus' pieces are really, really, really strong right now, and the queen is being threatened. So queen b1, and now knight e4. What is the idea of knight e4? Well, the idea is just to exchange this bishop and then capture this pawn on e5. So Fabi needs to exchange here, and after rook takes, there was a big exchange of pieces. Boom, boom, and now knight c4. Fabi's trying to get his knight into the game, but now Magnus brought his other rook into the game, bringing all the pieces. Rook c1, rook b5, threatening the pawn on a5 a little bit. Not yet, but he's going to try to exchange and then try to take this pawn. He's going to try to get into a winning endgame. You can see right now Magnus is still a pawn up, and now Fabi went for e6, trying to weaken this pawn. But after f takes e6 and bishop takes c7, which is the idea of going here, the pawn is hanging, there is this move, rook c5, threatening the bishop, and after bishop f4 and bishop d5, actually there's just going to be a big exchange of pieces, because we can see that the knight has to go somewhere. For instance, something like knight b6, and after takes, and I'm just going to show you, after takes and takes in this position, there would be bishop b4, and there would be no way of defending this a5 pawn. Magnus Carlsen would be 2 pawns up in this endgame, and therefore in this position, after bishop d5, Fabiano Caruana resigned. Magnus Carlsen beat Fabiano Caruana, who's known to be a really solid player, in 33, in 33 moves. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And with the black pieces as well. Beautiful game by Magnus Carlsen. Magnus is definitely back in the game, and he's saying, hey, I lost 2 games in the tournament. Yes, that was bad, but I am still Magnus Carlsen, and I am still the world champion, and I am really good at chess. I'm showing it here. That was an absolutely fantastic game by Magnus. I am now going to show you the final game, which was another decisive game between Richard Rapport and Praggnanandhaa. Richard Rapport, super strong grandmaster from, well, he's from Hungary, but he plays now for Romania. And actually, he played yesterday against Magnus. He lost against Magnus, but it was a really fun game. Every game that Richard Rapport plays is fun. Magnus said the same thing. And Praggnanandhaa, we all know Praggnanandhaa, Indian chess prodigy, 18 years old, from India, very, very, very young, but very, very strong. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. We got an Italian over here, bishop c4. Richard Rapport's openings are always really fun to watch. They're always really fun to see. So c3 and now d3, and now this is all very standard theory. Bishop b3, side after b5, bishop c2 can happen. Castles, knight f1. He's trying to reroute the knight and put it in a better place. Knight e7, bishop g5, knight g6, and h4. Showing that this is a Richard Rapport game. There is no other player playing it. No, this is him. And now after h4, he's creating an attack towards Praggnanandhaa's king. He's going to be pushing the queen. He's going to be castling queenside most probably, because it's very, very scary to castle kingside like this. So, h5, he doesn't care about the king. He doesn't care at all. Knight f4, and now he went knight g3. So he's bringing all the pieces to attack. I mean, one might say, okay, should you have captured an f4? Maybe, but he wanted to play it this way. Now in this position, you may say, Anna, why can Praggnanandhaa not capture on g2? Well, the reason is that if king takes g2, king f1, the knight has to go back to f4. And actually, this is just giving Richard Rapport an extra tempo. Now he could go something like h6. And this pawn over here, it's actually not that bad that Rapport lost it. He's actually pretty happy about it because it's opening up a file for his rook. So he wouldn't mind it. So, h6 was played, stopping h6 by white, and now, finally, he captured on f4 and went knight e2, threatening the pawn. So, knight g4, threatening on f2, rook f1, defending, knight f6, the knight goes back, and now queen c2. He's preparing for long castles. The king is getting out of the way. Bishop a7, knight takes f4, he's taking this pawn, he's saying, you know, this is a free pawn. It's actually really hard for black to defend it, so there's not really any way to do so. g5, then white would just go en passant, so it wouldn't really work. So knight takes f4, c6, rook e1, and now the idea is that, yes, black is giving away this f4 pawn, but he's going to be capturing Richard Rapport's h5 pawn, so it's going to be equal material. So takes queen d2, and now queen f6, threatening this knight on f4, knight takes h5, bishop takes, and now we have this position where actually white is slightly better. That was a pretty crazy opening. White is slightly better because white has the center, white has these open files, and there's going to be actually some attacks against black's king. So rook h1 was played here, and now bishop takes f3, g takes, and now this actually opens up Praggnanandhaa's king a little bit more, but it wins a pawn for him. So now rook h2, defending on f2, and now Praggnanandhaa said, I'm going to get my king out of the way. And guys, king f8, you may say, okay, king f8, all right, it's not too crazy. But let me tell you something. This king went on a walk. Praggnanandhaa's king went on a walk. It was crazy. It went on a fantastic, it went on a walk at least. That's all I have to say. So bishop d1, threatening the queen, queen f6, and f4, getting some space in the center. King e7. Was it a fantastic walk? Maybe no. Actually, this idea of going on a king walk, I mean, his plan is that he doesn't want to have the king over here. It's very scary because Rapport's rooks are going to be doubling up, and he's going to get a really good attack. So he actually thought that his king would be much safer on the queen side. But did it become safer? Well, you guys will see. So d4, the typical thing, you want to just open up the center when the king is in the center. So Praggnanandhaa's king keeps running away, and now e5, queen e7, rook g2, and now g6. f5, he's opening up everything, and this is exactly, I mean, this is a masterclass on how you play against an open king. You just try to open up everything. You just bring up the pawns, you push the pawns, and you open up everything because the king is just so weak. So now g takes f5 pretty much has to be played. Rook g7, pinning this pawn. And after rook f8, there was actually also a mistake here. It was crucial actually for Praggnanandhaa to capture on e5, but it's really hard to allow this because the queen is going to be checking the king. But the king will go here, rook d8, and there'll be a fake castles going on. But here, rook f8 played, and now brilliant. Well, okay, Chess.com is not saying brilliant, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's a beautiful move. e6 check by Richard Rapport. What is the idea? He's checking the king. Pawn cannot capture because the pawn is pinned. So king c7 has to be played, and now bishop h5. The pawn can still not capture. You can still not capture this pawn, and Richard Rapport will be winning this f7 pawn. So queen f6, rook takes f7, takes and takes, and rook f8, and now this is just, I mean, yes, it's Rapport a pawn down, yes, but this king is just so vulnerable and this pawn is so strong. Queen e3, getting the queen in the open file, and now, I mean, Praggnanandhaa thought that there was nothing else he could do than capture on f7, which is true. If he does anything else, I don't know, let's say that he would go something like h5, the threat is to go queen e8, and then if captures, he'll take it, and there's nothing that you can do right now. This will be captured. The queen moves somewhere, the rook is coming in, and it's pretty much almost going to become a checkmate. So, this cannot be played. So in this position, rook takes f7, he had to sacrifice the exchange, and after it takes queen e7, and after the exchanges, king b6, c4, and resignation by Praggnanandhaa, because Richard Rapport is just going to be capturing all the pawns, and it's going to be a winning endgame for him. So this is just completely winning. There's nothing to do. And yeah, he's going to win this. The rook is just too strong in endgames. So everybody, these were the 3 games that I chose for today's recap. I hope you enjoyed them. I thought they were really beautiful. These are the standings right now. Here you can see how the standings are looking. We are right now, like I said, reaching the second half of Tata Steel. In a few days, I'll be going there myself and I'll be live streaming and showing you footage from the tournament. I hope you guys are excited about that because I really am. Thank you guys so much for watching the video and I'll see you all in the next recap. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.